This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Grateful to have you here on this episode of the show. Jesperson here with Hicks. In just a second, Dr. Andy Knight. We've been waiting for this guy for a while, but he's been all around the world working in the Caribbean. He's been on a speaking tour in Quebec. The professor of political science out of the University of Alberta, and a specialist in understanding international relations, and his commentary on the relationship between Canada and the United States, how it has changed already and how it will continue to change. Something I think we'll all want to pay heed to. We'll get you up to speed on election-related developments over the weekend. And we've got some great emails as well from Real Talkers, including a positive reflection from Sheryl, a really good one. Sheryl's dog fell in the river too. And so we're going to get to that, presented by our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy, before the show is done. This episode of Real Talk is happening with the support of Alberta's top online real estate school. You can see them at relo.ca. That's RELO.ca. That's where better real estate training starts. Relo is real estate learning online for the bold and ambitious. Wherever you're at in your career, they're going to help you find the next level. They're the only real estate school that sets you up with a professional practice network, professional development webinars, and more. You can check out their pre-licensing courses. So they get you all set to write your exam. Then you get licensed, and then they'll help you put your best foot forward as well. If you're keen on those bundles, those are the most economic options. The commercial or residential real estate bundles. Make sure you use the promo code Ryan100. All one word, Ryan100. It'll knock $100 off each of those bundles when you get started today at relo.ca. Big weekend, lots going on. And obviously everybody paying attention to what Donald Trump's next decision will be on tariffs. Who knows? As he pressed pause for 90 days last week, this was the big story, kind of a 10% blanket tariff on many, if not all, nations. But of course, Canada being hit a little harder than the rest. Nobody hit harder than China. Keeping an eye on all of it is a professor of political science at the University of Alberta. He's a specialist in international relations, past provost fellow in Black Excellence in Leadership, Dr. Andy Knight. It's nice to see you back on the show. Thanks for making time for us.
Ryan, it's always good to be with you.
Yeah, I think we reached out about a month ago, and you said I'd love to, but I'm in Quebec. And then
crazy.
A few weeks later, you just got back from the Caribbean.
Yes.
What were you doing down there?
But we had we were sort of assessing, doing a quality assurance interviews with a number of people at the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute. This is a major economic institute that looks at the Global South and the challenges of the Global South: climate change, pandemics, food insecurity, etc. And they're doing some tremendous work in the Caribbean. But every 5 years or so, they do is an assessment to see whether or not this institute is sort of maintaining the goals that were set by their leaders. Sir Arthur Lewis, when he was alive, he's now passed away, but he's done he's left a tremendous legacy to the Caribbean and to the world, I would say, to the Global South in particular. And they're concerned about the impact of Trump 2.0 as well. And what that's done to them. I mean, they had a lot of funding coming from USAID, and that funding has evaporated because of Trump. And now they're looking for alternative ways of funding their projects and so on. So this assessment, this quality assurance review that's done every 5 years, this was a way of sort of saying, where is the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute today, and what does it need to do to be effective for the future? So I
would imagine with the funding loss through USAID, that there's probably some programs, maybe some that you saw that were immediately canceled, that interrupted work that's happening right now, and then I would imagine there's some stuff maybe a little bit more forward-thinking work, maybe like research as an example,
right,
as opposed to in the moment type supports. Yes. Did you see evidence of both?
Yes. For example, there's some really interesting studies being done about disability. For example, that money is gone. So they're going to have to try to find new funding, and I think they're trying to get funding from the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, and other institutions that would fund that kind of research. But that's research that normally gets shunted aside, right? Who thinks about disabled people, right? In the view of the central element of research. But I think that they're trying to get the alternative funding to be able to support that kind of research. Now, things like climate change. I mean, the Caribbean is one of the hardest hit places in the world when it comes to climate change. They're like the canary in the minefield in some ways, because they see the impact, the direct impact, immediate impact of climate change down there. The rise of sea level, the rise of temperature and the rise of sea level causes major devastation to the tourist industry, for example. Things like food security. There's a big challenge for the food security in the Caribbean. So where are they going to get their food from? If people locally aren't interested in agriculture, and that dates back to legacy of slavery and so on. People are less interested in being farmers, for example, in the Caribbean. So they import a lot of their food from outside. They're going to have to change that way of thinking as a result of what's happening right now with food insecurity. So those are the kind of things that are, pretty pressing, pretty immediate, and they're trying to deal with those things. The longer term issue is what do you do about the global economy in general? I mean,
it's what everybody's wondering
about that, yeah. The impact of Trump 2.0 has been devastating to the region so far. And we haven't really seen the impact yet because, as you say, some of these things have been put on hold by Trump now. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens in 90 days, the devastation of this impact.
You haven't been silent on your blue sky, to say the least. You say what you mean.
I say what I mean.
On that platform, you posted a while ago. I reached out to you after this. You said America should be declared as a pariah state by the international community. You let everybody know you've canceled all travel into the States as long as Trump and his goons are in office. You said you recommend that Fulbright Canada issue a statement and a warning about cutting ties with the States until what you describe as a wretched situation changes.
It is a wretched situation because I know colleagues in the United States. I've been to Yale, as you know. I did a year at Yale University, and unfortunately, a lot of the scholars that are there, the scientists, are thinking about leaving. And we've had at least 2 major scholars left Yale for the University of Toronto. At the Monk School at University of Toronto. I think there's a sign here that many scholars want to get out and go somewhere else where their work can be actually acknowledged and accepted. So I think that's a problem for scholarship and so on. And particularly in the area of DEI, they've had challenges with Trump trying to erase all the gains that were made in the last 2 years. I think since the George Floyd moment, we've had a lot of changes being made as a result of DEI in the States. We call it EDI here in Canada. But no, there's a big pushback against that. And I can see how that's having a devastating impact on scholarship in the United States.
You went on to post that you said, as a Canadian and a former Fulbright scholar at Yale, I should have included that in your intro, shouldn't I have? It's just a long list, Andy. But you say fascism in the Trump administration is real and it's tarnished America's image. People are using that word a lot, fascism, and I'm not sure that everybody's 100% familiar with what it means. Where do you see evidence of it? Can we dig into it?
Yeah, I was very careful not to use the word fascism before because I thought there were many people just saying this word without knowing exactly what it means.
It's kind of like it gets watered down if it doesn't fit.
It gets watered down, yeah, exactly.
But if it fits, then you should use it.
Exactly. Right now I think it's fitting because the whole idea of trying to challenge scholarship, deny real scholarship. I mean, that's happening on a daily basis in medicine, in political science, in sociology, and all these things. And trying to sort of, I guess they don't have, most fascists are not interested in truth, right? They have a particular way of developing a narrative that's very much their narrative, and they're not really interested in the truth. And I think universities are supposed to be interested in the truth, and scholars have to be interested in getting to the truth. So that's really put us at odds with what's going on in the political realm in the United States right now.
How much longer can you see this lasting? Like, I mean, there's a few different ways that I guess you could approach that question or answering that question. Number one, the obvious one would be midterms, and the result that we might see a pushback from the American people. But I mean, the United States has a bit of an interesting political vibe too, doesn't it? Like January 6th, that insurrection kind of showed that there's a pocket of Americans, many of them may be Trump supporters, but you start to wonder about those who who were promised that their grocery costs would go down and that their cost of living would be less of a burden on their family. And now they're actually seeing it, the problem worsen.
That's right. That's right.
Not move in the right direction. I know that the president has said you got to take your medicine. He said that there's pain after surgery. This is going to take a while. What was it that he posted the other day? Be cool.
Yeah, be
he
cool.
posted Americans need to be cool.
Yeah.
But you wonder how long that might last.
Yeah, the jitteriness of Americans right now.
Yeah.
Because things are not turning out the way that they expected. I mean, they voted for the president in large part because he was supposed to bring about a better economy for them. I know they're seeing a worsening of the economy, and it's going to get worse because you see what China's done. China is not bending the knee to the president. They're going to push forward with a number of tariffs themselves that will have impact on the farmers, and that's going to be a key element here. If you hit the farmers, you're hitting a large base of Trump supporters. Just in the same way, if you hit technology, and he's backed away from technology now because these are people that supported him financially, I think, in the last election. So I don't know how long it will last. I think I would like to say that the sky is not falling yet, but I put this in the larger context of shifts in global order. I think we're living at a moment of time right now. I call it the interregnum because the interregnum is a period of time when there is a shift from one world order to the next. That world order of 1945 is being attacked. The foundations of that world order, which was set up, by the way, by the United States, is being attacked every single day now by Trump. So the acceleration of the end of the United States as a hegemonic leader is happening right before our eyes. And I think once that happens, I think we're going to see ourselves in what I call a new world disorder. Before we get to another world order. So we're going through this period of time, we're seeing the turbulence and the flux, the uncertainty, the disequilibrium, that represents the interregnum, that period of time of transition away from one world order to the next. So I like to put it in the broader context, rather than look at the individual cases right now. You realize that the United States is losing out on being a hegemonic power. Once the hegemonic power, the big giant is dying, it trashes around, right? You see the chaos and turmoil and turbulence. That's really the trashing around of a dying empire, essentially. Rome fell, Britain fell, Netherlands fell as hegemonic powers. The United States is one of those hegemonic powers that will fall eventually. So I don't see it lasting forever, but I think in the next 4 to 5 years, we're going to see a diminishing of the power of the United States and increase in the power of China. And you've seen it happening already. China is now the number one country in a number.
China looks vulnerable though too, doesn't it?
It is vulnerable too, yes. And that's one of the things I don't agree with is this notion that China will become the next hegemonic power. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to go through a phase in which no country wants to be a hegemonic power. And if you talk to any Chinese scholar, and I've spoken to a lot of them in Beijing recently, and they're saying the same thing. They say, well, China doesn't like the term hegemony. It's not part of the Chinese vocabulary. They don't like the idea of a hegemony taking advantage of the rest of the world in the same way that the United States did or Britain did and Rome did. These hegemons fall. So China is very, very cautious about taking the leadership role in the world. But on the sideline, I can see China actually taking over or filling the gaps that are being left by the United States. And my visit to the Caribbean, I think, played this up very much in my mind. I saw this challenge between these two big powers happening in the Caribbean region. Caribbean countries are dealing a lot more with China, and they're dealing less with the United States. In fact, they're trying to sort of get rid of their dependence on the United States. And as a result, they're becoming more and more dependent on China.
Was this a trend before tariffs?
This was a trend before tariffs, yeah.
What was prompting it before the tariffs, getting off of dependence on the United States?
Well, I think China had made a very assertive role in the Caribbean. They want to be able to show that they can play in the backyard of the United States. And they've done this effectively in Cuba, in Barbados, in Trinidad and Tobago, in Guyana, where there's oil now. China wants to show that they can play in the backyard of the United States. And that's a challenge to United States hegemony in the region.
Redneck Philosopher is in our live chat right now, and it says it looks like the TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome, from this show is at its peak today. Says Jesperson and his media experts. He puts it in quotes. I guess your Yale fellowship doesn't qualify you as an expert, Andy, but he says they have Trumps living in their heads rent-free. This is funny as fuck. That from Redneck Philosopher. Trump living rent-free in our heads. Donald Trump is demolishing the global economy and managed to make trillions of dollars disappear on the stock market. I don't know what you call the opposite of Trump derangement syndrome, where you just sort of like sit under him and let the sweat drop off into your face. I guess that's what Redneck Philosopher's doing. But how would you respond?
Well, the problem with the Redneck Philosophers is that they don't see any problems with Trump's strategy. Scholars and people like myself who look at the situation in the broader term, we don't have Trump living in our heads. A lot of these things are happening before Trump came to office. The United States was already sliding as a hegemonic power before Trump came into office. Trump's first foray into politics just simply accelerated that fall. And Trump 2.0 is accelerating even further the fall of the United States. We're seeing it happening right before our eyes. How can you deny the fact that the whole global economy is in a mess right now?
People talk about the Biden administration's proclivity to spend. Said that America was on shaky ground, economically and otherwise, heading into that presidential election. Is that the number one evidence you would point to, or do you think when you talk about the dissolution of a hegemonic power, of like this we call them the global superpower, right? The most powerful nation on earth, the most powerful economy on earth, the most powerful military on earth. Right. Were there other areas where you starting to see cracks in the foundation?
Yeah, if you look at the history of hegemonic powers, they tend to fall whenever they overextend themselves globally, right? The United States has been overextending itself globally. Look and see what's happening in Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on. They have actually been overextending themselves. The Soviet Union fell as a major power in Afghanistan. Imagine the people in Afghanistan, a small state, relatively speaking, was able to defeat the Soviet Union, cause it to diminish to the point where it sort of disintegrated into many different states. So Russia is just the outcome of that disintegration. And Russia can never sort of become, like the Soviet Union was, a major power again. I think the United States has been, benefiting from being a hegemonic power for so many years, but they didn't pay attention to the fact that they were destroying other economies in the process, or other political systems in the process, trying to push their notion of democracy onto Afghanistan or onto Iraq or onto Iran. It did more disservice to them because people started to push back against the United States. And I think that's where we saw evidence of the United States failing as a major power. It was overextending itself to the point where, lots of funding that should have been spent on domestic issues were being spent on forays, international forays, right?
So can you use this as justification to pull back on USAID? Like is Elon Musk onto something with some of these DOGE initiatives?
Not really. I think the USAID played an important role in trying to, every time that there's a challenge internationally, sometimes you need to have assistance to people who are being devastated by the challenge. USAID was one of those organizations that would deal with issues that would normally be marginalized in other contexts. They would give funding to be able to support people who were going through famines, LGBTQ individuals that were being pushed back by their governments.
Lives being threatened.
Lives being threatened and so on. So they were doing some very good work. Even the work in the Caribbean dealing with trying to improve agriculture, for example. It's a very simple thing, but it's very important for the Caribbean small states. They were doing that kind of important work. So when their funding was pulled back, all of a sudden those kind of issues, those kind of projects ended as a result. So we have to find alternative ways to fund those projects.
Now, at the end of the day, you are a scholar in international relations, but you do call Canada home, and so I want us to make an effort to bring this conversation home. Ultimately, at the end of the day, obviously you're just back from the Caribbean. You just landed a short time ago, but so we're getting a glimpse on maybe what Trump's policies or American involvement internationally means for many different nations. Why don't we talk about Canada on the other side of this break, in particular in the context of a federal election? There's a lot happening right now,
There's a lot happening.
to say the very least. We got Gizmo in our live chat this morning, powered by Park Power. Get exclusive discounts on internet, electricity, and natural gas at parkpower.ca/realtalk. Gizmo says we are already bringing American medical professionals to Canada as we speak. Says they're coming to 4 different provinces so far that have adopted requirements to allow Americans to practice immediately. That's one example of many. A brain drain headed north. That's kind of a nice change of pace, isn't it?
That's what it is.
More with Dr. Andy Knight from the University of Alberta in just a quick second. First, Real Talkers, I want to make sure this is on your radar. You have but a couple of days left to make sure that you are in the mix for the Full House Lottery. Time's almost up. Your last chance to win big. The final deadline, midnight, April 16th, midweek. Don't miss your chance at life-changing prizes, all in support of cardiac care at both the Royal Alexandra Hospital and the University of Alberta Hospital. There are dream adventures, dream getaways, and dream cash prizes all waiting to be won. You can check it all out at fullhouse.ca. That's where you can get your tickets too, including grand prize number 1 worth $2.25 million, that legacy signature dream home, a 2025 Alfa Romeo, and $20,000 cash. Grand prize number 2, dream vacations for life worth more than $200,000. Grand prize 3, a tiny dream home. I love this. You can choose that $250,000 Fritz Tiny Home gift certificate, or, of course, you can take $200,000 cash. It's all your choice. When you win big, you can get your tickets today at fullhouse.ca. I'm so excited to let you know that the Ranch Golf and Country Club is open tomorrow. That's right. If you're listening to this the day that we're doing this show, Monday, April 14th, Murray and the team pretty excited that opening day will be Tuesday, April 15th this year. You can check out their 2025 rates, make advance bookings on their website. That's theranchgolf.com. You can also tour the course. I love this. Hole by hole, get a sense of exactly how to play it. I can't wait to be on that first tee box. The Ranch has a really special tee box, number 1. If you've been there, you know. You got to get it over the water. For me, it's just a nice 3-wood, shape it over the tree, wind up in the middle, pitching wedge up onto the green, and then if you're me, you 4-putt. That's how you do it. But always a nice look at birdie on hole 1 at the Ranch. A shout out to everybody that'll be out there for day number 1, opening day. That's April 15th at the Ranch. And a shout out to our friends at California Closets of Canada, a Canadian-owned and operated business that does all of its manufacturing right here in the province of Alberta, putting together custom closets and storage solutions, all of them designed by their team in consultation with partners just like you, working with all different kinds of budgets, all different kinds of needs. For some of you, it may be a very basic installation. You're looking for function for your small family. For others, maybe it's that dream walk-in closet in your dream home, the one that you've always wanted. No matter what it is, it's guaranteed for life when you work with the team at California Closets. Hanging out with Dr. Andy Knight, a professor of political science and international relations at the University of Alberta. By the way, you've just wrapped, it was a 2-year assignment, wasn't it? Provost Fellow, Black Excellence in Leadership at the U of A.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not overstepping here, but pretty much either during your term in that role or shortly after, U of A's president, Flanagan, announcing that the university is ending its EDI programming. Right now, they're replacing it with something else called ACB. But what did you optically? People sort of stacked it up against other, big corporations, American brands that are abandoning DEI plans. How do you feel about it?
Well, this is to me is a disappointment, because I remember when George Floyd was killed in the United States, there was a lot of what they would call liberal individuals who were pushing the notion of EDI, right? The need to be equitable, diverse, and inclusive. And that seemed to make a lot of sense, because individuals who are of color, individuals who are marginalized, gay individuals, a number of people who would be marginalized within society got an opportunity then to be at the table. Mm-hmm. And I think part of my job as Provost Fellow responsible for Black Excellence in Leadership was to highlight the fact that there were Black scholars at the University of Alberta doing extremely well, and that we needed to do more of including them into the mainstream of scholarship. And as you know, there weren't very many black scholars at the University of Alberta. I was one of these people that came in back in 1998. I was the only black person in my department. Was probably the only black person in the Faculty of Arts, which is one of the largest faculties. And over time, I've seen an slow increase in the number of black scholars coming in. One of the things that struck me was a student that came to me and said, Professor Knight, you're the first black individual that ever taught me in school from K to 12.
Ever.
In Edmonton, ever. I mean, I could not believe this. It blew my mind. But I realized that the presence of a black individual at the podium is something that many individuals who are black in schools, they look forward to this because as it means that they can say, look, if he has done it, I can do it too. So we were like sort of mentors without even realizing it, right? And we got put on all sorts of committees. Every single committee, they wanted to have at least a representation of the black, a person of color on these committees. So we got overextended ourselves as individuals. So I thought it would be necessary to bring in more black faculty members, and we made a pitch to the new president at the time, Flanagan, to hire a whole cohort of black faculty members. And as you know, 2 years ago, he hired 12 new black faculty members, representing one per faculty. And that was a major boost in what I call inclusion, right? And this is happening as well among indigenous peoples. It's happening as well among women. There are more women being brought in, more indigenous people being brought in, more black scholars being brought in, and that to me was a positive. So now this big pushback against EDI, I think, is a setback, is a major setback for the university, is a major setback for many organizations, institutions, and I think it does a disservice to the fact that we have become much more diverse as a country. We talk about multiculturalism all the time. And we always sort of pride ourselves that we're much more diverse than even the United States is, even although they're diverse, but didn't accept and embrace diversity in the same way that we have. So this to me was a setback, and so I was kind of disappointed, to be quite honest. But it came at the end of my term, my 2-year term as provost fellow, which means I can speak out now, and I can be very critical of my own administration for pushing back on EDI. And for creating a new system, a new acronym, if you will, access, community, and belonging, which to me waters down the notion of EDI. And I think that's where the challenge is for us as an institution.
I almost feel like it's almost like the president acknowledged that he didn't say watered down, but he did say, he said the shift is more than a change in terminology. He says it reflects a deepened commitment to creating community where everyone can thrive. He says, for some, here's the quote, for some, the language of DEI has become polarizing, focusing more on what divides us rather than our shared humanity. Some perceive an ideological bias at odds with merit. And I do think he's onto something there, because some people do perceive an ideological bias at odds with merit. Some would look at the good news story of 12 black faculty members hired and say, what about deserving Chinese faculty members or white women? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Every single one of those black individuals that came in were top-notch scholars. They weren't token hires, and they were in different faculties. So we have engineers, law, political scientists, sociologists, agriculturists. They're all individuals that are doing the top of their fields. So we're not bringing in individuals who are just tokens just to check off the box to say we've brought in some black individuals. I think this is something that I think the president sort of missed to inform the public in Alberta of what really was happening. If you talk to anyone who's been on the committees with some of these individuals, you'll see they're high quality individuals. Diversity doesn't have to be a weakness. Diversity is a strength. In fact, as Justin Trudeau put it once, he said diversity has become Canada's superpower. And many people might dismiss what Justin Trudeau has to say in this province, especially in Alberta, but the reality is he's onto something. Because when you have diversity, we're not just talking about diversity of color of skin. We're talking about diversity of thought. We're talking about diversity of ideas. We're talking about diversity in terms of recognizing the importance of disabled individuals. We call it ability, right? you have different kinds of abilities, right? And those individuals have just as important a say, or should have just as important a say, as the regular able-bodied individuals. So I think diversity is really a strength for Canada. We've embraced it. We call it the multicultural mosaic rather than the multicultural melting pot. In the United States, it's like a multicultural melting pot. We call ourselves the multicultural mosaic because we are able to maintain our identities, whatever it happens to be, at the same time embrace Canada as a whole. So you have this notion of unity in diversity that is at the center of what EDI was all about.
Do you think that how one of the things that we try to, Johnny and I try to live out loud in front of the microphones and be honest with the audience, and I always say that I'm trying to be really careful on sort of hyperbolic language or how people talk about I mean, a classic example might be Pierre Poilievre talking about how Canada is broken, and some people may feel very sincerely that elements of Canadian governance or Canadian society are broken and do need to be fixed. But I think a lot of people also kind of twitch. They get a little bit defensive when they hear that their country, the country they're so proud of, is broken. And Poilievre hasn't said that for like a month for obvious reasons. Everyone's rallying under the flag, and it doesn't mean that everybody agrees on politics anymore, and it doesn't mean that everybody's going to vote the same way on April 28th. But what do you make of Canadian identity and what we're proud of, and maybe how that has evolved or changed or perhaps become more important to us since January 20th?
I think the reality is that we've become a very diverse country as a whole. So we cannot ignore that fact. And as a result, I think there is a notion, a feeling, right, by white individuals in Canada that they are now becoming the minority in this diverse complexity. And that's understandable. I can see why they would be concerned. There's a whole theory called the white replacement theory. It's very, very much evident here in this province of Alberta. But I can see why people might feel that maybe some of their jobs are being taken away by people who are foreigners and that sort of thing. That's, to me, the hyperbolic statement.
Just look at anybody in the comments section talking about Tim Hortons these days, right? Yeah. The comments section on any post about Tim Hortons now have become some of the most horrific internet communities that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and that reflects badly on us because, I think Canada is a diverse country that we should embrace that diversity. Because once you're diverse, you can add something new to the conversation, and sometimes you can improve your outcomes in decision making by having a diverse people around the table. And that's one of the reasons why I think we should maintain that notion of multiculturalism as a mosaic as opposed to a melting pot. We don't have to become all the same. We don't have to become homogeneous in our way of thinking. We can have differences of opinion. And there's nothing wrong with having conservative points of view and liberal points of views, and the NDP having a socialist point of view. These are all necessary to help to build Canada into what it is today. And we can actually become, we are now already one of the top countries in the G7, for example. We can't deny that. We shouldn't ignore that by saying that Canada is broken, because if Canada was that broken, how come we are one of the top countries in the G7?
Interesting feature on you, Dalhousie. Are you a alum?
I did my master's at Dal.
Oh, you did? Okay. International rights scholar, that's you. Says, look at history to understand our political present.
Yes.
Take us into this.
Well, I've always felt that it's important not to make the same mistakes that we've made historically. And that means understanding how we lived in the past to understand how we will live today in the present and how we will live in the future. So our problem has been that we haven't really recognized sometimes our historical failures, right? For example, slavery. Slavery was a crime against humanity. It happened in the past. We don't want to repeat that crime against humanity today because it really devastated a large number of people from the African continent that were forced into North America, forced into the Caribbean. We saw the devastations of slavery, and the legacy of slavery continues today. So the prison system reflects that legacy of slavery. There was something called the Black Slave Code that was created by the British in order to punish slaves to keep them under control. That Black Slave Code has developed into policies that police forces have adopted, policies that the prison system has adopted. So we have to be very careful not to let that past history, be repeated again. So, for example, on tariffs, we've had past history with the tariffs. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs were devastating to the American economy. We repeat tariffs today, and we see the devastation again in a much more pronounced way because the world has become much more integrated because of globalization. So we're even more vulnerable to tariffs than we were before, back in the days of the 1950s. So why don't we just learn from history, not to repeat the mistakes of history? And that's the point I was trying to make there, Dal.
I feel like most people get it on tariffs, just not the most important person.
Well, that's the thing.
Just not the decision maker.
But not only that, but I think his not just the decision maker. It's not just Trump, but also the people around him, the billionaires. And you notice what's happening right now. There are massive crowds going to see AOC and talk about the attack on billionaires, oligarchs, as you call it. There's a reason why that's happening. There's a big stir among the population in the United States, pushing back against the oligarchs, pushing back against the technocrats that have taken over the government of the United States. These are a minority number, a small minority group of people that has actually taken over the running of the United States economy. That should never happen. That kind of decision making should be done in Parliament, right, or in the House of Representatives or in the Senate. Not among the very rich individuals who may have no interest on how the poor and the middle class are suffering.
We've got some great comments here in our live chat, powered by Park Power. I told you there'd be good insights in here. Jillian says she says DEIA. I've never heard. She says, so it's diversity, equity, and accessibility.
Right.
Is about who you let in the door, who you give a chance to, not who you hire. The right or racists deliberately trying to misrepresent this is evil. Tracy says we all have bias, and being qualified is having a combination of skills, knowledge, and experience. Equity is the desire to seek out differences and be inclusive of those differences. Jillian, by the way, goes on to say, she says, I am also the only black teacher most of my students ever had and will ever have. That from Jillian.
Yeah, and and that sounds very surprising to me. In the province of Alberta, it's become very diverse. You would never expect that in the
maybe 10 years from now to be different. Maybe 5 years from now to be different.
Yes, hopefully. But you have to include the people. You can't keep marginalizing them because of the skin color. So you have to include them into decision making, because otherwise you're going to have the same people making the same decisions over and over again, which will push individuals of color out of the decision making.
What's in the context of our federal election? We've talked a little bit, obviously, about the United States, and of course, the relationship, the very important relationship that Canada has with the United States. How does that translate into what you're keeping an eye on this federal election campaign? What are some of the, depending on if you talk to one person and then another, you can get a totally different take on what's the biggest story of the election, or whose policy is really resonating, or for that matter, who seems destined to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. But what are you really keeping an eye on?
Well, I'm keeping an eye on the individuals, the leaders, in fact, who take a responsible position on these issues. One of the things that have struck a chord with Canadians now with Mark Carney is that he seems to be a very low-key kind of individual, but very careful in terms of what he says. And he has this experience of being the head of the Bank of Canada and the head of the Bank of the UK. He has that kind of experience working in that economic sphere and dealing with individuals across the globe. I mean, this guy has got amazing experience in that area. And then you contrast that with Pariah, a person who has never done anything else but politicking, then you have a real challenge. I think Canadians are starting to begin to wake up to this fact that we want a leader who is not necessarily just a politician, but a leader that can actually deal with the economic challenges that we're going to be faced with over the next 4 years, next 5 years. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this shift in the political fortunes of the Liberal Party. And although things are tightening now as we get closer and closer to the election date, there's still a 6-point gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives. And I think that's a reflection of the fact that people begin to see an individual who they consider to be much more careful in his language, much more knowledgeable about the economy, than Pierre Poilievre. And his problem is that he was being sloganeering, right? A person with lots of slogans, but there's not been a lot of substance to those slogans. I mean, if people are feeling the pinch of the economy in their pocketbooks, when they go to the grocery store and so on, that's understandable. He can pick up on that. He can use that as a means of attacking the Liberal Party right now. This is the governing party. But if he doesn't offer an alternative to what the Liberal Party offers, that's a challenge. I think we want to see alternatives that's going to make Canada a better place.
It's been fascinating for me to see the parties getting closer and closer together, and not just polling. But the Conservatives kind of closed the gap a little bit in the 5 or 6 days previous to us talking here today. But we're seeing, and on a candid level, on kind of a street level, you'll hear people like supporters of Poilievre are saying the Liberals are stealing our ideas, and then Sean Fraser, the former Liberal minister, this weekend saying that Poilievre's stealing their ideas. Poilievre said he's going to some degree and in some way, shape, or form keep support dental programs and childcare programs and the like. Pretty tough to say you're going to pull those out from under people during a campaign. But Sean Fraser says all that this guy's done is rail against them for years. That's it. And now he says he's going to keep them. But what about Mark Carney? What about the Liberals and the carbon tax? Carney gets rid of the carbon tax and kind of leaves Poilievre. It reminds me of that the Monty Python, like I'm not dead yet. The what is it? The knight that's got like both his legs lopped off and he's still trying to swing his sword, right? And it's like both parties are working to kind of take away the top talking points or the most impactful policy from the other, and they're bringing them closer together.
Well, I think what you're seeing though is an attempt to appeal to the moderates in Canada. I think the majority of people in Canada are moderates. They're not left-wing fanatics or right-wing fanatics. They're moderates. And any political party that keeps being on the fringe will never do well in the election. You see what's happening right now to some portions of the NDP. And because sometimes they're considered to be more fringe than mainstream. The problem is that we have to be able to embrace this moderate position. So you can see how the Conservatives have been moving more to the center. Moving away from the right wing closer to the center, and the Liberals have been moving away from very left wing politics more closer to the center. So yes, they're trying their best to appeal to the massive majority of people.
I think it's positive for Canadians.
It's positive for Canadians. It's best for Canada actually to have that kind of thing. That's why I never criticize people for having their political points of views. I mean, you can have your political point of view that's different from mine. That's okay. That we live in a democracy. That's what's supposed to happen in a democracy.
100%.
And so please let's not criticize people because they have a different political philosophy than we do. But let's make sure that our philosophy reflects the majority of Canadians, because that's what democracy is all about. The majority always, at the end, will win out in any election. Yeah,
to remind people, Donald Trump secured more votes than Kamala Harris. That's like it or not, Americans made their choice. And I mean, it's just, it may not be good for everybody, but at the end of the day, the democracy is worth protecting.
Right, exactly.
Right?
And at the same time, we look at what politicians do and not just what they say. So you can say a lot during the political campaign, but it's what you do in Parliament that matters. And that's one of the problems that Pierre Poilievre has right now, because when you look back at his voting record, on many of these issues, on pharmacare, on Medicaid, that sort of thing, you look back at this record, it doesn't quite reflect what he's talking about right now, right? So you wonder whether or not he's just saying this in order to get votes and appear to be more moderate than he really is.
I mean, the cynic in me believes that every politician is saying things to get votes. But I digress. Vamp Fashions in our live chat says houses cost double, 50,000 are dead from illegal drugs. Over 2 million are using food banks. There's skyrocketing homelessness. What would you call Canada other than broken? Idris says on DEI, says we have so many gaps in representation. East Asian men, for example, in media in Canada is very new, says, and it was similar thinking that has improved that representation. He says, look in the United States, look in the UK, and you will see very few Asian men represented in media. Tracy says the country and most employers currently have a diverse, inclusive workforce. Equity is much more difficult to measure. This requires purposeful design. Ben, kind of interesting pop culture reference, says he saw a very cool short about the movie Top Gun. says the female character, the female lead based on a real woman who retired in 2014, was the highest ranking woman in the Department of Defense. Says that was very cool to find out. Interesting. I didn't know that. Ms. Katie says, I worked in an organization that celebrated diversity in a team of 32. At least half of them were from other countries. Says we had quarterly potlucks where everybody brought something from their homeland or from their culture. That's kind of cool from Ms. Katie. Look at everything we've talked about today. This is resonating most in the chat.
Well, I think it's a reflection of what we are. We are a diverse community. And I think a recognition of that diversity is what's important, right? An embrace of that diversity, not just to tolerate somebody because they're different, but to embrace them because they're different and recognize that their difference counts and matters. So a person who is not able to walk because he happens to be disabled should still matter in our society. We shouldn't treat them as though they're marginal. An Indigenous person who has not had the benefits of people of privilege, that Indigenous person is still very important to our society. We should embrace them. So I think that's a point that I want to make. We can have unity in diversity.
Before, I know we're keeping you a little longer than we asked, but and I hope you're not jet lagged or anything like that. But I do have to. Is it okay if I ask you about your work for the Canadian Forces?
Yeah.
You did. You filed a report, right, for Department of National Defense, like almost 60 pages, if I understand correctly, on supremacy.
White supremacy.
White supremacy in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Yeah.
What are you able to tell us about your findings and what recommendations did you make?
Right.
I imagine we could sit here for 3 hours, but what are some of the top ones?
Well, I guess one of the challenges we have as with our Canadian military is that the military is supposed to reflect the diversity that Canada has become. The problem is that in recruiting, we tend to recruit mostly in rural areas rather than urban centers. So one of the first things I found out while doing this report and the research for this report is that the Canadian military has been focusing its attention on recruiting in rural areas. It's the easiest thing to do. If you are in a rural area and you don't have a lot of choices in employment, it's easier to sort of join the military and become a member of the military. That's, you get a good life, you get free education, you get housing, food, meals every day. You live a pretty good life. You travel. If you're part of peacekeeping, for example, you could travel to different parts of the world.
Sure.
It's a pretty good life. Now, the problem with not recruiting in the urban settings is that that's where the diversity of Canada really lies. And we need to be able to recruit more in urban settings. And the reason why we're not doing very well in the military right now when it comes to diversity is that 90% of the military are white males, right? It tells you something, right, about the
90%?
nature. 90% are white males. That's a large percentage. How can you become a peacekeeper in the Congo or in Haiti or in any country around the world that happens to have brown or black individuals if you don't have people that look like them in your military? It becomes very difficult. It's the same thing that we have when it comes to trying to push a sort of English-speaking force in Haiti, for example, that speaks French. You have to have a combination of people who speak English and French. And I think Canada has been very lucky to have that kind of bilingualism in its military. But what we have to do is to increase the number of people of color in the military to reflect the diversity that is Canada. And what we need to do is to include Indigenous people in the military. It reflects, again, the diversity of Canada. Or individuals who are Hindus and Muslims. We have a diverse religious groupings of individuals in Canada. They should also be reflected in the military. So the challenge for the military is that because they have been so focused on recruiting in rural settings rather than urban settings, it's become very distorted kind of military. And that's caused the problems because within that distortion is this infiltration of white supremacist thinking. The notion that we are better than you. The notion that they're trying to replace us, so we have to be we have to be on guard to protect the white race, essentially, is what's being filtering into the military slowly but surely.
Like, how have you seen it? Is it like subtle? Is it organization? I mean, obviously 9 out of 10, 90% white males obviously speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But is it like a subtle, almost like an insidious below the surface type thing, or are there like blatant, obvious? Like, what did you find through the course of your research?
One of the interesting things about Canada is that our racism is being very polite.
Very polite racism?
We've been able to sweep things under the rug rather than deal with it up front. So, for example, one of the top military officials in the Navy today is now a black person for the very first time. You walk through the corridors and you see all the pictures of all the past, officers, leaders in the Navy. White male, white male, white male, white male. Occasionally one white female. And there's never been a black face on that wall, right? He will become the first person of color on that wall. And that says to me something, because after all of these years, we still don't have that kind of representation at the highest level in the military. So if you don't have people representing diverse points of view in the upper echelons of the military, you're bound to sort of have this notion, this creeping white supremacy idea, I know called racism creeping into the military. And we have to be able to sort of stop that from happening before it sort of kills the military's reputation and its professionalism.
Let me dig into this for a second, because Ali is in our live chat, and I want to give you a chance to kind of respond, because you were talking about you have an opportunity to travel, it's a stable job, it's kind of whatever, and Ali says, come on, like, military is an easy life. I don't think you're saying it's easy.
It's not an easy life, not at all.
He goes on to say, we've had the best peacekeeping forces and race has never been an issue. He says this is sort of an insult to our forces. That from Ali.
Well, I just want him to take a look at what happened in Somalia. I don't know if you ever heard about the Somali case, where Canadian military unit was disbanded because of their racism in Somalia. They killed a Somali individual, and this became a black eye for Canadian peacekeeping forces around the world. We have done a lot of good, and I'm very careful to mention that in my report as well. We've done a lot of good in peacekeeping. In fact, Canada has been known as one of the top peacekeepers in the past. We've lost that reputation because of some of the things that have happened within the military. And this is not from me saying this. This is from past military officials, past military soldiers who have come forward and said, we've seen this around us. We've seen the kind of racism that you're talking about happening within our units. There was one individual who said he got so comfortable with this group of white military guys that got recruited around the same time that he did. They were saying they joined the military to learn how to kill brown and black people. Literally, that's what he said. I didn't include that statement in my report because I thought it was very inflammatory to include it. But the reality is there are some people with that mindset. They go into the military to learn how to utilize weapons. And they can use those weapons against the state later on, as we saw happened in the case of the convoy. Many people don't remember the convoy anymore, but the convoy, there were some military individuals who were part of the planning of the convoy, and those individuals were actually court-martialed, right? So the military is taking, they realize there's a problem. They want to try to weed out these individuals who come into the military, but there's still a lot of people coming in without any sort of true sort of vetting that needs to take place. And that's one of the problems that we have.
Wow. It's and I understand, like, for some folks, if you're part of an institution, especially in a position of privilege, and then that institution's makeup or history or future is being challenged, it's tough for some people to hear.
It's tough for people to hear, and they want to push back against that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I'm not known as a person who is anti-military, so I can't be accused of being anti-military. I've been very supportive of the military. If you look at all my writings on Canadian military, it's always been very positive about Canadians' contribution to peacekeeping, the way in which that we have contributed basically to stopping crimes against humanity as a Canadian force. So I'm never negative, but this particular incident of creeping what I call xenoracism, creeping white supremacy, is very much a concern for any scholar, and very much a concern for some of the top people in the military. They're also concerned. and they want to know, how do we weed this out, right? It was much better for somebody like me coming in and doing a sort of external report than for the military to do an internal report about this, because an internal report might be considered not to be very objective. But I took an objective stand in my reporting, and I identified the areas of weakness. And it's like, we always talk about one bad apple can spoil the entire bunch of apples, right? So what we want to do is identify that bad apple and get rid of it before it spoils the entire basket of apples.
I always enjoy our conversations.
It's a lot of fun.
I feel challenged every single time we talk, and I mean that as the utmost compliment.
Thank you.
You're also a very entertaining follow on social media. And if people want to read more about your work or connect with you, they'll find you on Blue Sky. You stuck by your guns, man. You left Twitter and you did not come back. As a matter of fact, it's your pinned, what do you even call it? It's not a tweet. It's your pinned post. People can find you on Blue Sky just by searching W Andy Knight or Knight54. You say, this is my first post on Blue Sky. This was 5 months ago. You say, I'm officially off Twitter. I hate what Musk has done to that platform.
Yeah.
I looked for you this morning on there. You're not there. You're gone.
I'm not there. I'm gone.
You blew it up.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that he's done a disservice to the community that was created on X, formerly Twitter. Mm-hmm. And when it became X, I think that was my first clue that something was going on. Mm-hmm. And I want to be able to be in a community of people who are willing to listen to other people and to be able to put their ideas forward in a very sort of non-confrontational way. And I think Blue Sky is doing a lot better job of that. Although I think we have to be careful too, not to become too one-sided in Blue Sky. But I think it's already become a much more, how should I put it, much more enjoyable forum to be in.
Yeah, I'm still getting a feel for it. I'm just new over there. I keep having to remind myself to post, and I'm not very good on there, but people can find me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it seems to be a little more civil, but I'm also finding it a little bland, to be honest.
Well, I
kind of like Johnny and I always chuckle. I don't mind when somebody blows me up on social. I kind of have fun with it. But I think for a lot of people, it's been, I mean, I'm being glib, obviously. But for a lot of people, the comments are heinous and unacceptable. And mine has always been sort of more of a gentle rub. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've obviously enjoyed you.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks very much for having me.
Really appreciate it. And gosh, I mean, we could keep talking. And every time you and I chat, I feel like I learned something. I told you that before, but we're really grateful for this. So thanks for making time.
I wouldn't mind making a plug.
Do it.
My daughter's documentary called Trusted to Serve is really an outtake of the research that I've done on this issue of white supremacy. But she took a slightly different take on this. Starting with the idea that the Canadian Armed Forces should have a commitment to upholding the highest standard of professionalism, and they should be trusted to serve Canadians, etc. So by sort of picking out those individuals who have been hard done by the military, I think she's done a really good service to the community in large by doing this very wonderful documentary, which, by the way, will be out soon. For the public to see.
We'll have to bring her back. She's Nazanin Knight, a well-known filmmaker in the province or across the country, has been on the show before, as you know.
Yes, 1844 Studios. That's her studio.
Yeah.
So, yeah. She's a great young, person who tries to bring very difficult issues to the surface using the medium of film. And I think that sometimes has a lot more uptake than my books can ever have, my scholarship can never have, because people are more willing to watch these documentaries.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm on IMDb right now reading all about it, but we'll follow up on this. Trusted to Serve, the film by Nazanin Knight. We've been talking to Dr. Andy Knight, a professor of political science in international relations at the University of Alberta. Thanks for doing this, Doc. It's always so good to see you.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
I
always appreciate it.
You bet. Obviously, this live chat is banging. If you're listening to this outside of our live stream and you want to leave a comment on the episode, please do, and we'll take a look at those. And, of course, you can always send us an email as well to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We make time as best we can every single episode to get to comments that you've submitted about past shows, and today will be no different in just a moment. moment. First, I want to let you know this interview has been made possible with support of partners like our friends at Friesen Brothers, offering premium smoked meats as a perfect option heading into this Easter celebration. If you're in charge of that with your family, you got a couple of different options at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. Catering by Friesen Brothers, making dinner easy with a fully prepared Easter dinner box. For $79.99, you get turkey, both dark and white meat, roasted baby potatoes, creamy dill carrots. They will blow your mind. Tray buns, cranberry sauce, gravy, sour cream, bacon bits, real bacon bits, ready to heat and serve. It feeds 4. So if you're feeding 8, just order 2 of them. You're feeding 16, get 4 of them. You see how I can do that, right? Perfect for spending more time with loved ones and less time in the kitchen. You pre-order and then you pick up from your local Friesen Brothers store. You can find all the details at cateringbyfriesen.com/Easter dinner. Our friends at UCAN Youth Services doing remarkable work, creating opportunities for young people through several different programs. You can check out their work on their website. That's ucan.ca. You can link to it on the sponsors tab on our website as well. You can learn more about what they're doing for young people aged 12 to 17. These are young folks, like teenagers, even some preteens, interacting with Edmonton police on sometimes a daily or weekly basis. They're providing resources and supports for those young people to try to get them on the right path toward education or employment. And then for young adults, 18 to 24, they have their programs, the Verto Project and the Road to Work program, all of these based on partnerships with industry, where UCAN provides the training, the job readiness, so to speak, and typically through about a 20-week pre-employment program, it helps these young people find opportunities into paid employment. It's a remarkable setup. It's been working for years and years, and in part due to key partnerships. If you're hiring at entry-level positions in your organization and you could see a fit here, you can reach out, connect with UCAN today at ucan.ca. And if you're inspired by talk of international relations, political science, you're looking to level up for a competitive job market and new opportunities, Athabasca University offering world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. You can check out the programs and courses on their website. That's athabascau.ca. I love this because it's not just kind of your standard university, right? They've got open undergraduate programs, flexible grad programs, including an MBA, online courses, on-demand professional development like we learned about the other day, that neurodiversity in the workplace conversation we had. Again, you can learn more, do some digging today, find the right fit for you at athabascau.ca. Very cool to have Dr. Andy Knight in studio, and I sure appreciate everybody leaving a comment on the chat. And not everybody feels the same way about Dr. Knight's characterization or findings about the Canadian military. I imagine that there are some men and women who have served in the military that are in there commenting as well, and you can always let us know what you think about what you've heard. We never typically look at like a conversation as settled. We're always interested in learning more, hearing how it's landing with you, and getting your takes on some of the the top headlines we're talking about, or maybe some of the stories that are flying under the radar. John Hicks has been flying the plane on this Monday episode of the show.
Yeah.
How you doing, buddy? How was your weekend?
I just had a big stretch there.
Yeah,
as
you
you're
did.
asking me
You know what? That's important.
It's that Monday vibe, right? Yeah. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was a nice weekend. The birthday weekend, as you know, so I appreciate all the...
he loves to say after. He doesn't like to mention it on the day.
I wanted to keep us focused.
But Ryan's birthday was on Friday. Happy birthday, belated, buddy.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciated the kind words in the chat. Wanted to recognize Noob Try again, throwing the $10 in the super chat for a birthday beer. So we made sure that we had one.
Appreciate it.
And but then it was my pleasure. Actually, I spent the weekend doing some work. Remember that Innovative Canadians for Change?
Isn't this always how our weekends are?
We're
like, it's the weekend, enjoy it, and then we go work.
We're gonna go work. But we had a chance, and we had talked about. Remember the work that we were doing, and Dr. Abdullah Saleh was in here for a Real Talk Roundtable. It was on the 4th of April. If you want to check it out, talking about the work. He immigrates to Canada, him and his family, he grew up in war in Iraq, and this guy has risen to be like the director of surgery at the U of A, and like this guy's unbelievable. He's also an inventor. Him and his buddy contracted out a potter, like a guy that can do pottery, and they found a way to build these water filtration systems. He describes it on the show. where they've essentially what they've done is for a $10, their cost of manufacturing these things is like $10, and it can create clean drinking water. It filters out, like they use some of the most horrific water around the world to test these things. And families are getting clean water for like 2 to 3 years at a time through these $10 filters. Amazing. And so we had a gathering in South Edmonton, their annual ICChange Gala. It was amazing to see some of you real talkers there that heard about it on the show. You each bought a table, came up and let me know after. I was grateful for that. But also a very powerful one. They got Dancing Cree, you know that group? That was the group that opened up Rogers Place.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously, like it's basically like a powwow on wheels. Like they bring the powwow to you, and they have the drumming circle, and then they have these dancers, and just. What a way to set the tone.
They're absolutely incredible. At the Elks games, they get standing O's.
And they were and I have like just chills watching them. And then they get up and the lead dancer, he started talking about, basically the fact that there are many First Nations communities across Canada that don't have clean drinking water, and just drawing the parallels there and talking about how important the work that was being done was happening. And then to hear about how the organization is doing work internationally, but also here in Canada. They say we're looking to solve problems as best we can here in Canada too. So that's how my weekend was. My heart was full.
Boom.
And then had the boys over yesterday and watched what was, I mean, an unbelievable finish to the Masters. Rory McIlroy finally wins.
That was close though.
Oh boy, was it ever close.
If he chokes here, this is going to be a stain on legacy as potentially the biggest choke ever. But yeah, I didn't even watch it because I'm not a huge golf fan, but I was tuning in and I was like, oh, this is even getting anxious for me, like because it's so close. And I tuned out, and then I just got back on social media later in the evening. First thing I see, very top of my X feed, is him putting on the jacket. I was like, Rory.
Yeah, and of course he just, like anybody who saw it. Listen, if you saw it, you already know, and if you didn't see it, it's because you don't care about golf. So I won't spend too much time on it, but.
Yeah, but it's the biggest in that sport. That's the biggest. Yeah.
Either we are all Rory or Rory is all of us. Having a chance to win it on 18 and missing like what looked to be about a 6-foot putt. I mean, that is me all day. I miss like the closest putts you can possibly imagine. So I felt like we could all relate. But he did what he needed to do. And poor Justin Rose, the Englishman, who has now lost in the last 2 Masters playoffs. So you hope that guy will get a shot at his first green jacket as well. Interesting comment from Don on the Canadian Forces conversation in our chat. What's up, Don? Says rural depopulation has dried up the farm and forestry supply of recruits in the Canadian Armed Forces. Really? Says most of them are now city kids. He said, I'd be interested if the guest took a look at today's demographics versus in the 80s and 90s. I'm sure he did, Don. You will find out if that report is available for like public consumption. I don't know that it is. Interesting from Super Chat Ken, who says he left all social media until Blue Sky. He says, I gave Blue Sky a try, and I love that I can get great information from various sources like economists, scientists, and others with no diversions.
Well, Blue Sky's great, but don't close your windows and your doors and pull the shades down. And I agree with you. Like, one of the reasons I don't go on X as much anymore, because clearly since Elon took over, you can argue with me or not, but the place it's a dumpster fire now. There's porn, there's like tons of hate and stuff, way more than before. And I don't know if that's just like, there's less, moderation or whatever you want to say. But like, just from a personal standpoint, I don't feel great when I'm on there. And I use social media to feel great. I go on Instagram to see great, fun posts. I go on X to get informed. I don't want to go on there and be sad and anxious and freaked out about every fucking thing in the world, even though right now it's hard not to. But I will say that it's good to go on Blue Sky. It's good to get doses from everywhere, but don't just go on Blue Sky and ignore everywhere else, because you're getting that narrow tunnel vision, right? When that happens.
Miss Katie says, OMG, I can't get away from golf and my family. Let's say my brother, both his sons are pros.
You're telling me, KD, come work here, man.
Yeah, we literally have, my golf clubs are right over there. We have a putting thing in the back. Anyway, we got an email from Sheryl over the weekend, and I knew exactly what she was talking about the minute that I saw her subject line. Her subject line says, size lies.
Size matters.
We had a few of you writing getting into the show. Sometimes it's funny because Johnny and I, we try to leave each other alone through the weekend so we can have some time away.
Yeah, right.
But there's always correspondence. And I said to Johnny, we got to get to this story on Monday. CTV and the CBC have both dedicated reporting resources to this. And what they found, I'll read the report. Rally size has become a contentious election issue with both liberals and conservatives promoting their crowd sizes. And so CBC News' visual investigations team, look at this. They're using like all kinds of technology.
Well, it's not really technology. This is actually called manual head count.
Well, yeah, but I'm just being cynical because they all have red dots on all the heads. It actually kind of looks like a military. It actually kind of looks like everybody. I won't go there. Looks like everybody's about to take a headshot. But investigated both Poilievre and Carney's rallies and found that actual crowd sizes significantly smaller than reported.
They're all lying. They're all, and this isn't a left or right thing. And here's the thing. We're not experts, but we know more than the average bear. I'm going to say me and Ryan, we both worked with the Edmonton Oilers inside a facility that can hold up to 20,000 people.
We know what 18,000 looks like.
We go to events every weekend, and before we get on stage, or if we're told to go on early, it's because, hey, the head count's at 1,200. Get out there. And we step on stage and we see that's 1,200 people. Yeah. Or, hey, there's only 300 people in the room. Wait an hour till you do your intro or whatever.
I walked into the room on Saturday night and I walked in and I saw the tables. This is just a little bit of a boast on something. You know, if you have a nerdy ability to do something that most people can't do, but really it translates into nothing.
Something
and this
we
is
do.
Me. So I walk into the room at the gala and I say, oh, good. I go, what is it, 300? She goes, 290. I said, nice.
Exactly. And us I'm in event planning. I put on weddings or whatever. I have to gauge the size of the room and make sure the sound is adequate for it. So there's times where I look out there and they say, we need, 500 to 1,000 sound for that many people. And I get to the event and I'm like, there's only 308, like 80, maybe 400 people here. Like, we just have an eye for it. Are we experts? No. But here's a video, for example. The conservatives are saying this is 15,000 people.
At the Nisku warehouse.
In an air hangar in Nisku.
Yeah, okay. So this is...
that is 15,000 people. Immediately when I saw this, I said, this is not 15,000 people.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
The warehouse is full.
RCMP said it could hold 9,000 to 12,000. So 15,000 right away is a bold-faced lie. But over 15,000, here's a comparison, Ryan. This is 15,321 people at a Jets playoff game.
Okay, with the ice wide open. So
Does
take
that
that for what it's
look
worth.
like
the ice
3
is wide
times
open.
as many people?
Yeah, and you have, obviously, anybody can imagine, even listening on the podcast, of course, you have the 2 decks, plus you got the luxury boxes. So you have folks stacked up on top
Here's
of each
16,000 at a sold-out playoff game for the Oilers.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and now I'm going to go back to this video. For people on our audio version of the podcast, go to YouTube today. It's a good reason to. Now I'll go back to this video. Take a look at this. 16,000 people, just over, at an Oilers game, and this is 15,000. There's absolutely no way. No, in my mind, there's no way. So,
and the conservative rally is what we're talking about right now, but liberal rallies as well, right? Like both parties.
They're both lying.
And CTV and CBC has looked into this. This is not an attack on the conservatives. This is just like you can take a look at both rallies. And what the CBC is the one that I watched in particular, they've said that we found that both of them are stretching the numbers. Both of them are exaggerating.
They are both.
I don't even know if it really matters.
So liberals are saying, what was that? They said they had over 2,000 people at that one rally. I want you to go to your Slack and click that Pauly D video. Okay. So the Liberals and Carney said we had 25 or over 2,000 people at this rally.
Okay.
And I look at the pictures and I look at the video. I don't have the video right now.
Okay, I'll show the video on mine. Check it out.
But anyways, so the video, just pause that video, get it back to the start.
Okay, yeah.
So the Liberals say we had over 2,000 people. I look at this video and the pictures, and later we'll add them to highlights, but I gauged there's maybe 700 to 900 people there. This is from last weekend.
Okay.
This is Pauly D, 2,500 people inside of Fan Park, outside of Rogers Place.
For them, no
Look at these
deal.
crowd shots here.
It's huge. 25 is a lot of people.
It looks like way more than 2,500, right?
Yeah, well, photography, that's effective videography right there to
so
make it
for
look
me,
as packed as possible.
So for me, they're both lying. Another photo I'll put up here. So this is, sorry, where is it? I don't know if you can find it, but I have a video of it actually. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, not to rag on the Conservatives. We're saying they're both lying, but here's over 5,500 people, they say.
And that's a
at
shitload
rally.
of people, by the way.
It is not 5,500. This is $3,000 max to me. If we stopped and manually headcount, which reason people manually headcount, security still does it. When you go to
Fire marshals care.
dude, of course they do. But when you go to events, security has still got the ticker in their hand. They don't trust AI. They don't trust security cameras. They tick every person that comes in at every door, and then they get a general assessment of who's in the building. But anyways, they say this is over 5,500 people inside a conservative rally for Pierre Poilievre. This next picture I'm going to show you is 4,000 people. So 1,500 less in the moss pit.
At the fan park.
At the fan park during an Oilers playoff run. That looks like twice as many people. So both sides are lying, the liberals and conservatives, and I get that they want to inflate numbers. If somebody said, hey, there's 2,000 people in there, let's say it's 2,500. But doubling size numbers is a big difference between adding 500 or rounding up.
I just think, and again, I recognize this in the chat, like Cherie says, policies and the right direction for Canada is what matters. Screw the crowd sizes. I don't care. Others say are sort of like echoing that sentiment. Justin says, this might be a crazy statement, and then all caps, who cares? He says about crowd sizes. He says, come on. Says this is only because of Donald Trump's obsession that this even entered the mainstream. Can we please talk about policy and substance? And we will, and we mostly do, right? We're having some fun with this. I think this is
he's
fun.
right.
I think it's funny. Yeah. And again, we've got Vicky Machama coming up tomorrow. We've got Politico coming up on Wednesday, a special edition of the show Thursday with the friends at Meredith, Bosencool, and Phillips. So we got policy all week long, friends, as we get closer and closer to Election Day, April 28th. But one of the reasons why I do think that this is significant and interesting, number one, that these major outlets are dedicating the time and resources to do this. But number two, I think take yourself to any conversation you've had with somebody. But we all know that exaggerator. Right? We all know the exaggerator. And when an exaggerator starts telling stories and starts stretching the truth and exaggerating the numbers, it kind of takes away at the credibility of the entire thing. Right? Like if you start talking about 15,000 in a room and it's 9,000 or 10,000, then all of a sudden it's like, well, what's your perspective on, are you willing to, it's easy for us. We could tell you that our podcast gets 375,000 downloads a week. And really, quite frankly, you'd have no way of fact checking that, right? You'd probably realize why we weren't right up there with Joe Rogan in the charts. But people can bullshit their way to creating kind of a sense or an understanding of something that's bigger than it really is. I say, and we said this late last week, let the images speak for themselves. Tommy Temper, this guy, he's a YouTube creator and he spends a lot of time in our chat. I don't know if he's with us this morning, but to shout out Tommy Temper. So this is on his YouTube channel. This is shot from Tommy's phone. We're just showing his video. This is courtesy of Tommy Temper. But there's Stephen Harper speaking at the Nisku rally, and that's a real big crowd. If I was hosting that event, I would be very happy with the turnout. I would say that room is packed.
But there's no doubt.
But there's no way
it's
that there's as many people that are in there as there are at the Winnipeg Jets playoff games.
No, and that's the thing. I put up that Pauly D, wrap-up video of me with 2,500 people. We sold 2,500 tickets. Maybe there's another 100 to 150 people, security staff, food vendors, bartenders, EMS, people, ticket takers, whatever, scanners, whatever. So 2,650 in the building. When I put that video up, people started texting me and replying to the post and being like, was there 5,000 or 6,000 people there? So this is the thing. It's not anyone's fault. I think most people just see crowds and they automatically overestimate. They automatically think it's maybe a quarter or half or twice as many people or double or whatever. So it's not anyone's fault. But the fault lies with the parties when they tell people this. They're trying to create this air that this is 15,000 people. So the next rally, they can say, if it's a little bigger, they can say it's 20,000. It's not. It's always under. They're always rounding up. But I think especially right now, from both Carney and Poilievre's team, they're doing real damage to people when they outright lie and double numbers like this.
Alicia's 100% correct, says this strategy can also backfire. Parties say that they have massive crowds. Folks start to wonder why they need to vote. Right? Everybody else has got this. And many voters stay home. And I think that's a great comment from Alicia.
And the bottom line is this doesn't matter. It matters who shows up to the polls. Right?
Absolutely. Alberta Girl, by the way, wondering if we've seen the latest from our buddy Philippe Fournier at 338 Canada. Have you seen this? This is wild. These are the federal projections updated today, the day we're doing this. April 14th has the Liberals not just at 190 seats, which would be another majority, not another, I mean, it would be a majority government. The Conservatives with 124. Again, this is just a polling aggregator. Okay, this is not already said and done, but it has basically the Liberals owning the Maritimes, winning big in Quebec, doubling the Conservatives in Ontario. But get this, 7 seats in Alberta. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
7 seats in Alberta. You wonder where those are. You'd say that would be Chahal in Calgary. You wonder if maybe it would be Corey Hogan down.
Yeah.
This is where I start getting dangerous, because I'll start maybe offending those that are working hard that don't have the total name recognition. We have heard back, by the way. You remember we had some fun. We read that email from Real Talker Michael that was wondering about the concerning candidate that was running in Edmonton Griesbach. Remember, like the Facebook went to some guy in Kingston, Jamaica, and the Twitter account didn't exist and all that. You remember that? So we've actually heard from his campaign. Yeah, and they're requesting an interview on the show. We've responded. We're going to get back to them. I don't think we're going to do that unless we bring on all 3 candidates. That's kind of how we'll roll now. But they say, we understand your show recently featured some commentary. His name's Patrick Lennox, regarding Patrick's candidacy and online presence. They say there is some reasoning behind his limited social media presence, which is in the process of being established. I want to be fair here in reading from his campaign. I don't know if she's his manager, Jacqueline, but she says, much like Prime Minister Carney, our candidate in Edmonton Griesbach, Patrick Lennox, is a thoughtful, serious candidate with an impressive background, including top secret clearance. That from Patrick Lennox. So fair is fair. So we want to put that on the record and let everybody know.
I feel good that I have top secret clearance as well.
Yeah. Well, you
the,
have
to the
work,
Real Talk Studios.
You have to work here. You got to be able to get through 3 different locked doors.
Yeah.
3 different fobs.
It's not easy to get
Safety
in
first. We got a couple of comments here, and one of them that holds us to account from Tisha, and we wanted to make sure that we read this. But the first one from Morgan, he's Morgan Laidler on X, and he said he wanted us to make sure to read and put his handle on the record. He says, in case anybody wants to lock horns, he's ready for you at Morgan Laidler on Twitter, on X. He says, I've been playing catch up on Real Talk. Morgan is one of those that, and when I say claim, Morgan, it's not an insult. I'm just saying the fact is Morgan claims to have listened to every episode in Real Talk's history, if you can believe it. He says, I'm just hearing you read comments from people that have trouble seeing past their own nose, calling you and your audience both libtards and maple magas on the left and the right. And he says, I just howl at it. He says, because I'm sure that you may do, you probably do have your opinions on things, but for the most part, you keep your political ideology to yourself. And you have left-wing guests, and you have right-wing guests, and people from the center, and people that, quite frankly, you can't tell. And that's why I like the podcast so much. I get opinions that I like and agree with. I get opinions that make me think, and I get opinions that are honestly totally out to lunch. But at least I get to better understand where people are coming from. He says, so keep on keeping on. He says, people getting angry about your Twitter polls will never stop being funny to me. They literally mean nothing. He says, he says, I just love what this is all about. That from Morgan, and we appreciate it. And then we got this one from Tisha, who says, on your April 8th episode, you and Johnny were talking about what gets people blocked or what gets people timed out on the live chat. And you said you allow people to call each other names as long as they don't use racial slurs, but you're okay with letting the word libtard slide. And so Tisha says, I see the R word so often on social media, despite education about people with intellectual disabilities, that honestly, Ryan, this hurts. She says libtard is a combination of the words liberal and the R word. And maybe if we don't normalize using words like this, it would be less acceptable, and maybe our social media landscape would be a more welcoming and inclusive space. She says there are so many options to this is great. There are so many options to use if you want to call someone a name, says Tisha. She says, I do love listening to Real Talk. I find it informative. It includes many different views. Thank you for considering this change. That from Tisha.
Well, that's up to you. But
That's a
I
great
would say
perspective.
I don't let anyone call that. I let people say that word when they say, and I don't even say it, but when they say the LTs are whining about it or the LTs are doing this, we kind of let that go. If somebody directly throws it at someone, they're going to be out. And it's not, you can call people names you can only call people names if it's not racist. Name calling at all, I usually time someone out. or say, hey, you've had it for the day, come back tomorrow. I don't like anyone, because I feel like when you start calling names, you've lost the debate. I want to see people debating. Get fired up. Get angry.
Yeah.
Shout. Use expletives. Use exclamation points. Use emojis. I don't care. But the second you start calling someone names, you don't know this person on the other side. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know if a softball is going to ruin their day or a hard ball is going to drive them to the edge. And that's why I don't let anyone call anyone any names.
Yeah.
But hey, the LT thing, if you want to get rid of that too, we can do that as well.
Sure. Yeah, Matthew, and I'll acknowledge this directly. Matthew says, Tisha's right. You guys letting Libtard go is a wild ride. Listen, the common thing in PR is if you're explaining, you're losing. But I will say this, we're not letting it go. Number one, everybody here is a fucking adult. Okay? Everyone is an adult.
It's also hard to moderate a chat.
Number two,
right?
we're moderating a chat because, guys, the show is going like this. I'm doing an upward trajectory. I'm doing the opposite of what the stock market was doing last week. The show is going like this, and we're pretty excited that we've doubled YouTube subscriptions in 1 year. We routinely have 1,500 plus comments every single episode. It is not realistic that we can jump in there like a kindergarten teacher and stay on top of everything all the time.
Fast
so we're not.
now.
Any word that ends with tard, I kind of look at, and I'm seeing this sort of reflected in sentiments in the chat as well, as I immediately judge the person using the word or applying. Is that a suffix? Would it be a suffix? There's prefix and suffix. I don't know. If you add tard to any word, in my mind, it's just kind of a degenerate move.
Yeah.
But to be clear, Matthew and everybody else, we're not like letting it slide. It's just like sometimes it's on their chat there. But if we see, like, for example, someone came in and dropped like the N-bomb earlier this year, you're immediately blocked for life. Like if you use that word in our live chat, some of you have been timed out, I know, from time to time, and we'll move on from this, don't worry, for 60 seconds or 3 minutes if you're really going nuts. You know, some of you will take runs at our sponsors. What are you doing, guys? Trying to take food off our table? So you are going to be timed out for that. We're cards on the table. We're telling you that as a fact. But some words will get you blocked for life, and that's not the move we want to do. We don't want to do that.
Not at all. But like, let's just keep it cool in the chat, because now what I'm doing is I know people who are the abusers and they don't care about the 3-minute timeouts. So most of the time, like if they're on this trend of where they're insulting people, I just cash them out for the day. So like, do I have to make it a week, a month? I don't want to babysit these people, Ryan. Let's all just be good to each other. Get mad. Like I said, say fuck, say all the things you want. Just don't insult people. The second you do that, and the same thing you just said, when somebody uses LT or whatever these words, I'm like, I lose a lot of respect for the person, even though I don't know who they are. 100%. It's just an avatar, but
Obviously.
I'm like, who is this person? Who,
Obviously.
you know, or when people call people Nazis, if you go to the other side or whatever, I'm like, you don't really know this person. Like, it's just comments on politics.
I love this from LT. Yeah, Jespo, please keep bragging about Real Talk's numbers. It's like liberals and conservatives bragging about crowd sizes. The only difference is you can see our numbers on YouTube. You can go take a look at them.
1,000 last week.
But listen, we love you guys for real, and we're so grateful for you. We have an amazing positive reflection coming up based on, kind of a wild experience our family had last week, and it turns out that Sheryl's experienced the same thing. It felt like a person, just a perfect positive reflection. But before we do, and before tickets for the Edmonton Opera's 2025-26 season sell out, I do just want to make sure that you know that the new season is out. It has been announced at edmontonopera.com, and you can check it out. Some legacies pass down while others must be claimed. And 2025-26 for Edmonton Opera is a season of legacy, starting with Bravi, Opera's greatest hits in partnership with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. This is October 9th and 11th. Going to be a wonderful show at the Windspear Center. What a venue. Again, you can get your tickets just to that production, or if you'd like, of course, you can sign up for season tickets as well. That'll ensure your tickets to Indians on Vacation in February, first week of February, a poignant and comedic new opera based on Thomas King's novel of the same name. The season concludes with the third chapter of Wagner's legendary Ring cycle, Siegfried, an epic tale of heroism and fate, will be performed at the McLab Theatre at the Citadel on the 25th, 27th, 29th, and 31st of May, 2026. It's never too soon to get your tickets for what will guaranteed sell out at edmontonopera.com. I always just want to let the singers keep going. Unbelievable stuff. North Road Investment Council's team has been keeping an eye on everything happening stateside and, of course, around the world. The global economic rattling that we felt, the shakiness, it's never been more important to have a steady hand, a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing, and that's exactly what Marshall, Carey, and their team do, partnering with discerning families, foundations, and associations on the winding path of wealth accumulation and investment advisory. They offer strategic approaches to wealth management that will align with your vision, regardless of what your priorities are, the stage you're at in life. Plus, they provide digital risk advisory services. They're the only ones, leaders in digital risk advice within the wealth management industry. You can take a digital risk quiz, see how you score today for free on their website. That's northroadic.com. And we're so proud to partner with the team at Complete Care Restoration. Every time we show you the big wide shot of this studio, you can see the master craftsmanship of what they managed to install here at this 110-year-old warehouse that we operate out of. Whatever your home or business challenge is, burst pipe, smoke damage, asbestos, they do it all. They've been doing it for more than 25 years, restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. They have emergency services available, ready to respond 24/7. You can learn more about the business and their services by checking out completecarerestoration.ca. Shout out to Super Chat Ken. $10 in the Super Chat, Ken. We sure appreciate that. He went on to just say basically,
the GOAT. He's unbeaten.
He says, I don't ignore everywhere else, so I don't close my doors and windows. He says, I just don't go on billionaire-owned platforms that skew their content and manipulate their users, including kids. Ken says, I like how he puts this. Ken curates his time. This is good, man. Our time is more valuable than anything else we have.
But Ken, there's not many platforms or news outlets that aren't owned by billionaires.
What could there be like a
or billionaire corporations?
A community-owned. I mean, they're all for profit, obviously.
Checks?
I remember some of the best advice you could ever get from somebody says if you're using a service and you are not paying for it, you are the product, right? So everybody that's using X or Instagram for free, that's not paying for it, that's getting the advertising, you are the product, and they are selling you, your use of that platform, to the advertisers, right? Just be aware that you are the product.
Yeah.
And I think it's good because it kind of shapes your perspective on how you use those products.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we shared this with you, kind of a wild circumstance. You can check it out on our YouTube archive or wherever you get your podcast if you missed my wife, Carrie, and District Chief Brian Williams from Edmonton Fire Rescue just last week. A tough circumstance for our family. Our dog uncharacteristically launches into the North Saskatchewan River trying to go after 2 ducks and winds up just about dying. She was in that frigid water clinging to an ice floe for about 15 minutes. We tell you the full story. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts, and we're just so grateful that there was a positive outcome here, and happy to use the platform to try to spread the word to other people as well. Did you see the video over the weekend? A family of 5 on an ice floe that traveled from Edmonton to Fort Saskatchewan. This is totally wild.
Oh, no, really?
Oh my gosh!
I saw one guy on the North Saskatchewan on a piece of ice, and I didn't see the other one.
Yeah, I'll go to Yag Wave because they just have everything. And but check this out, and I'm not going to throw any shade. I'm showing it on my screen right now, Johnny, but this is a family floating down the North Saskatchewan River in Edmonton. They floated reportedly from the city of Edmonton to Fort Saskatchewan, which is a hell of a journey. But the ice patch broke loose after they were having a campfire on the ice, if you can believe it. So it's got, and fire rescue did go in and
so
help
they meant to
this
do
family.
this.
Well, they didn't. I don't think they meant to have it break off.
Okay.
It would be wild if you meant to do that.
Is that a paddle? The one
it's like a big log, and he kind of looks like Huck Finn. You know what I mean? It's
looks
only
like he's on an adventure.
It's only kind of, I guess there's there's obviously young kids.
Yeah, I'm sorry to laugh.
It's not like it's funny. Everybody, the fire department, firefighters I saw some of the interviews that they were doing after said that they actually, quite frankly, couldn't believe that there were no fatalities, considering the distance that they had traveled and the fact that they were out there. But listen, I'm not throwing stones. Like our family, we called 911. We had the fire department out at the riverbank last week as well. I'm not throwing stones. I don't think that the father of those young kids meant to do that, but it is a good reminder that you got to stay off the ice. And we got this wonderful email from Sheryl after she heard Carrie and District Chief Williams and myself talking on the show the other day, and we just thought it was perfect to wrap up our first episode of this week, courtesy of our friends at Solar by Kuby. Every week we bring you positive reflections. These are, well, they are what they sound like: a step outside the news cycle, a silver lining, something that made your day, something that restored your faith in humanity. Sheryl writes in and says, Jespo, I loved your story about your family lab, Monroe, and the good work of Edmonton's first responders. She says, something especially true for pet owners is you'll find that all lives matter, animal, human, or otherwise. She says, our dog, also a lab, got caught up in the Spring River breakup like yours a number of years ago. Labs love water. This is Sidney that you're seeing on our screen. What a good girl. She was smart, says Sheryl, staying away in spring and fall, keeping cool in the river on our long summer runs. But just like humans, dogs can miscalculate, and one mistake on an early spring day near the Laurier Rowing Club, she was swept away. Sheryl says, I couldn't find Sidney for an hour, and the only reason I didn't call the fire department is because I believe she was gone. And after giving up on my search, I saw a fire crew on the river. They had just saved another dog. It was an early thaw that year, and one of the crew mentioned seeing a black dog on the other side of the river. So I ran over the footbridge, and there was my amazing Sidney on the other shoreline below a cliff, wet and exhausted but alive. She must have stopped struggling and let the current carry her across, then swam to the nearest shoreline. What a smart girl, says Sheryl. Now, as for accusations about how rescuing pets selfishly ties up resources, I say phooey. Sheryl says emergency calls are always triaged. They're not going to let a child drown while they rescue a dog, and they will stop searching for a dog if they need to respond to a greater emergency. She says something good that came from my experience accepting the inevitable mortal journey of my dog. Most likely, I will outlive her. I knew that, whether that was today or another day. Sheryl says she did pass away last September, get this, at 16 and a half years old.
Wow.
She says, so I'm so grateful for the years and for compassionate first responders. Sheryl signs off, happy trails. Absolutely love that, Sheryl. It made my day, and thanks for commiserating with me. Sometimes it can be a little bit embarrassing when this thing happens, but at the end of the day, we wrap our pets in gratitude, don't we? And love. Grateful for every minute we have with them. And a shout out to first responders who are always there, the coiled springs, ready to bail us out whenever they can. Positive Reflections is presented by Solar by Kuby. You can get a free quote today or check out their careers link at kuby.ca. Coming up on the next episode of Real Talk, that'll be the 15th of April, we're going to check in with our pal Vicky Mochama. I think she's back from Italy. She'll be back from Italy.
Milan.
With another episode of Party All the Time, ready to rock. More election 2025 insights fueled in part by your observations, your emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Can't wait to talk to you next. Make it a great Monday.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supreme Betty, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Ori Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.